Hey, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to do a good amount of catching up. We're on the very bottom line of Kuf Tes Amud Aleph, actually the second to last line on Kuf Tes Amud Aleph. We're going to be learning about some pretty unique rules that the people of Sodom put in place. They will not click with you. They don't make sense. I'm telling you now, the whole place didn't make sense. And we're going to get into the underbelly of how they functioned. Before that, I just wanted to announce we're going to be having a siyum this coming Thursday morning. Wednesday is our last night on this Masechta. Thursday morning is anyways Tainas Bechorim. So for those who would like to join a siyum, and for those who want to be fleshik at 8:30 in the morning, we will be having whatever Yitz makes. I don't know. Had a couple of Jews sign up. If you are interested in joining, please sign up. You can just send me Venmo or Zelle. 7:45 Shachris, followed by a siyum privately in here. I think it'll be in here. Thursday morning, 7:45. Okay, so we are two lines from the bottom on Kuf Tes Amud Aleph. We do have a lot of ground to cover. As you can see, this blot is pretty big, and we're going to get to the Mishnah at the middle of Kuf Yud Amud Beis. So let us start moving along. Amre, they used to say in Sodom, the Islechad Torah, if you had one animal, then Marechad Yoma. If you had one animal, then you would take all the animals to graze for one day. But the Lesle, if you didn't have any animals, then Lire Treyome. So if you have one animal, you take all the other animals to graze for one day. If you have no animals, you take everybody's animals and graze for 2 days. Sounds backwards because it is. And says the Gemara a little bit of a story. Bottom line of Kuf Tes Amud Aleph. Ahu Yasma bar Armalta. There was an orphan who was the son of a widow, meaning his father had died. Havule Tare Lemare. And he didn't have any animals, so they gave him animals for 2 days. Because remember the rule that if you had no animals, then you had to take all the animals in the neighborhood and make them graze for a day. So he didn't want to do that. You know what he did? Azal shaklinhu v'katlinhu. So what he did is he killed the animals that he was supposed to watch. So let's just make a case scenario. Ruvain is this guy. Ruvain, his mother's alive, his father has died, he has no animals at all. But according to the weird rules of Sodom, when you have no animals, you have to take everybody's animals to graze for 2 days. So on Monday morning, they give Ruvain all these animals, and he shechs all of them, he kills them on the spot. Amar Lahu, you know what he did? He's a clever guy. He played their own rules against him. Amar Lahu, he said, the Islay Torah, you know what? If you have an animal, so then nishkol chad mishcha, then you only get one of the skins. The lesle Torah, but if you don't own animals like me, then nishkol trei mishche. Then I get 2 of the skins of the animals, a 2-to-1 ratio. So it says the Gemara, Amr le my high. And they said, well, how can you do that? He said, because you did that. And says the Gemara, Amar Lahu, top of Kuf Tes Amud Beis, 3 lines down. Sof dina kitchilas dina. The final din of me collecting the skins is like the beginning of the din of you trying to get me to graze the animals. Matchilas dina de isle Torah mare chad yoma. The lesle Torah mare tre yome. That if I had one animal, then I would have taken all your animals to graze for a day. But if I have no animals and you want me to do 2, the same ratio is going to apply to the end. Af softina, I killed your animals. The islay chad Torah, lishkol chad. The lesle Torah, lishkol trei. Again, the rules were completely out of whack. And sometimes we have rules in our culture that are out of whack, but at least we try. Sometimes things are not logical, but that's just kind of how it goes. Let's say you went over the bridge in Sodom. Da'avar b'mavra. You go over the bridge. How much do you have to pay? The toll is nesiv chad zuzah. You have to pay 1. De'lo avar b'mavra. But if you don't go over the bridge and you swim or you do any other form other than the bridge, you have to pay more. Nesiv trei. Now, that's exactly not how things work. Just imagine going over the Verrazano. If you use the bridge, you pay for it. If you don't use the bridge, you don't pay double. So the rules make no sense. And Dahavale Dara Delivni, there was a stack of bricks. A person was building a house, and you were allowed to go steal 1 brick. No problem. Asi kol chad v'chad, shakal chad. Everybody took 1. And the person who took 1, Amar Le, he said, Ana chada de shakli. I didn't take your whole building. I just took 1. What are you going to do? Take me to court? I stole 1 brick? Kind of just a backwards world. When you lay out onions and garlic, or garlic and onions in that order, everyone can take 1. You're allowed to take 1. You just can't steal all of the guy's stuff. Same argument again. And says the Gemara, Arba Daine Hayu Bisdom. There were 4 judges in Sodom. These were their names. Shakroi, the liar, Vishakrurai, the big liar, Zaife, the forger, Umatz Ledina, the one who has a messed up din. These are not good people. Says the Gemara, a crazy halacha within their halachos. Obviously, these are ridiculous, and obviously this makes no sense. So let's say Ruvain is fighting with Shimon, and so Ruvain is swinging to punch Shimon. By accident, he hits Shimon's wife, Shoshana, and Shoshana miscarries. What do you think the punishment should be? No problem. The person who made the miscarriage should impregnate the woman and put the baby back. That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, Amrele, Yavanehale, give her to Shimon, and Deneabre Nehalach. And he'll give her back to you when she has a baby inside of her after he impregnates her. Again, just such twisted ways of thinking. The pasuk le'uda dechamre dechabre. If I cut off a part of the ear of your animal, amrle yavanehale adekatcha. Give that animal. Let's say Ruvain cuts the ear of Shimon's donkey, so then Shimon gets to keep the donkey. Ears don't grow back. Ask Mike Tyson's patients; they don't grow back. So says the Gemara, if you do that, you basically lose your animal to the other guy. If I injure you, if I punch you and you start bleeding, you owe me money. Why? Because bloodletting, obviously. So because I provided you with a service, you owe me money. Granted, I punched you in the face with brass knuckles. Okay, but at the end of the day, I bloodlet for you. You owe me some money. We saw this earlier, but now it's going to be used in a story. You cross the bridge, it costs 4. You have to pay 8. 4 if you use the bridge, double if you don't. Says the Gemara about a third of the way down on Kuf Teslam at Beis. Zimnacha, the one time Asahu Koves. There was this guy who was a launderer, a professional laundry person. And Ikla Lahasam, he went to Sodom. And he didn't go over the bridge. Amrulei hav dalad zuze. So they said, you owe 4 zuz. They thought he went over the bridge. Amar luhu ana b'maya avre. No, I didn't use your bridge. I swam, or I took a boat of my own. Amrulei, they said, im kain, have tamanya to abras b'maya. Well, if you didn't use the bridge and you came to Sodom, you got to pay double. So you owe us 8 instead. Lo yoy. But he wasn't willing to pay because the rule's ridiculous. So they beat him up. Padyuhu. And then asalakami didaina. Then he went in front of the Bezdin in Sodom and said, what is going on in this place? And Amrulei, the Bezdin said to him, Havle agra de lachdama. First of all, when they beat you up, they caused you to bleed. That's the equivalent of bloodletting. You owe them money for that. And utman yazuze de abris b'maya. And you owe 8 because you didn't use the bridge and you swam. Eliezer, Eved Avram, Isrami Hasam. When Eliezer was, this was the Eliezer, remember the time that we're talking about, that Avram davened for Sodom. Maybe there could be some Jews over there who are tzaddikim. And Hashem says, okay, remember the whole back and forth. If you find me this number, if you find me that number, it ended up they got destroyed anyways. So Eliezer went to Sodom for something, and Padyuhu, when he got there, they beat him up. He was bleeding. So also the Kamedina, he went to Bezdin and said, these people are ridiculous. They beat me up when I showed up. And the Dayan said, Amar li, Havli agra de shakalach dama. Oh, because they made you bleed, Eliezer. Yes, they punched you in the face with a baseball bat. But now you have to write them a check. Why? Because they did some bloodletting for you and say thank you on the way out. So Eliezer was no dummy. Shakal galala, he took a stone or a stick. And you know what he did? Padu ha'ihu l'daina. He took the dayan, he beat him over the head with a baseball bat. And guess what? He started bleeding. And then Amar Maihai, the dayan said, what are you doing? You're in a court of law, you're in a bez. And he said, well, Amar le, agra de nafak li minach. You're bleeding. I made you bleed. So you owe me money because I made you bleed, Mr. Judge. Well, if that's true, then havne halei just give it to the other guy that I owe some money to. Vezuze didei kidekaimi kaimi. And I'll leave my balance sheet flat 0. I'm not giving him money. You're not giving me money. Your rules are completely ridiculous. Halfway down, last of the short lines. Havdi lahu poraisa. This is a famous one. There was a bed in Sodom. Dahavu magne ale orchen. And people who were guests in Sodom would have to lie down on the bed. Himarich, if they were too tall. Gaizele, they would cut their legs off at the feet. Kigots, if they were too short. Then maschenle, they would stretch them out and dislocate limbs. And it was a horrible treatment. Eliezer Eved Avram, same person, the same Eliezer. Ikla lahasam. He went to that particular town in Sodom. Amrulay, they said to him, Kum gani apuraya. Go lie down on the bed. We need to see how tall you are. Amar lahon, he knew something was up. So he said, Nidra, Nidri, min yoma demisas ima. I made a promise, he said, on the day that his mother died, lo ganina apuria. I no longer sleep in a bed from the day that his mother died. That's kibbut avaim. That's pretty intense. That's amazing. When a poor person would show up in Sodom, I know it's going to sound like good news, but don't worry, it won't be. Everyone would give the person a coin, but I'd write Karesh on that coin when I gave it to him. And then then we would make sure not to feed the guy until he starved to death. And then when he would die, everyone would go back and take their own coin. So says the Gemara, Hachi Asnu Beinahu. They came up with an internal policy in Sodom. Kolman demazmin gavra lebehilula lishlach glima. Anyone who invites someone who's not from Sodom to a party, we take all their clothes off in public. Okay? So Hava Hilula, there was a party. Ikla Eliezer lahasam. Eliezer showed up and sat down. He wasn't invited and he wasn't from Sodom. They didn't give him any bread and he wanted food. But he knew exactly how to play this room because their rules were ridiculous. What did he do? When he wanted to sit down and get some food, Asa Eliezer Yosef for the cooler. He went and he sat in the last seat at the last table, all the way in the back. Oh, Eliezer, you're an outsider. Who invited you? You're not allowed to be here. And whoever did invite you, we're going to take all of his clothes away from him. So Amar Leila, Ahuda Yosef, Ataz Mantan. You did. So what did the guy say? Amar, shoot. Dilma Shami Be Deona Azminte. Maybe people will say that I'm the one who invited this Eliezer. They're going to take my clothes, the High Gavra, from me. I won't have any clothes left. So he laughed. Shakal Glime Hahuda Yosef Gabe Rat Lebra. And he ran out of the building. V'chein avad lekulu ad nafki kulu. He went through the whole room. They said, "Oh, Eliezer, you invited me." And because he said it out loud, he thought everyone else would believe him, and the other guy ran out because he didn't want to get his clothes taken away. So their own policy again came back to bite them. Says the Gemara, Havya Hahu Revisa. There was a young girl. Terrible story. Dahava, she actually had a good heart. Dahavas kamafka rifta la'anya bechatzva. When she went to go draw water into a pitcher, she would hide some bread inside the pitcher and she would give it to poor people. Just a good neshama. She was just trying to help people. Higloy milsa. And then the matter was revealed. People found out that she was doing this. Shaf yuha duvsha. They covered her in honey. The okmuha al igar shura. And they put her on top of a row of bricks. And of course, asazibori va'achluha. And then the bees came and consumed her. Now, obviously, bees don't consume people, but they killed her. This is what the pasuk means when Hashem finally lost his patience. Vayomer Hashem za'akas Sodom va'amora ki rabba. Va'amar Reb Yehuda amar Rab al iske riva. The language in the pasuk of Rabba was a reference to the Riba, this young girl, who they mistreated in such a horrific way. Just terrible. 2/3 of the way down at the two dots. Miraglim, the spies, who went to go look at the land of Eretz Yisrael before the Jews went in, even though it wasn't really a requirement, but they went in anyways. Ein lem chelek l'olam haba, they have no portion in the next world. Shneimar, vayamusu anashim motzei adibas haaretz ra b'magefa. What does the word mean when it says vayamusu? That means ba'olam hazeh, they would be killed. What does b'magefa mean? That means lo olam haba. Short and sweet sugya. Let's talk about Korach. That's going to consume a lot of our conversation. Adas Korach ein lem chelek l'olam haba. The people of Korach have no portion in the next world. Shneimar v'tchas aleim haaretz b'olam hazeh. That's the olam haba divrei Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was the one who held that they have no portion in the next world. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Aleim Amar Akasav. No, I disagree. Hashem that Hashem, yes, He put them down into the pit, but Vayal that Hashem will take the Bnei Korach out and be able to elevate them into olam haba. Adas Korach just says what we're going to get into some of those details in the Gemara. Was Korach included? Was Korach not included? We're going to discuss that. Very good question. Tanu Rabbanon, Adas Korach, Ein Lem Chelek L'Olam Haba, like we saw. Shneimar V'tchas Aleim Haaretz B'olam Hazeh V'yovdim Mitoch Hakal L'Olam Haba Divrei Rabbi Akiva, like we saw. Here's a new shita. It's agreeing with the second opinion that we saw earlier with Rabbi Eliezer, but it's a different person. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseir Omer Harein Ke'aveda Mispakeshes. They're like a lost item that's looking to be found. In other words, yes, the Bnei Korach were put in the pit, but when they're found, whatever that means, then they will merit to have a chelik in Olam Haba. Shneimar to'isi keseh I made a mistake like a sheep that is lost. Bikei shavdecha ki mitzvosecha lo shachachni. They still know Hashem. They made a big mistake. They made a huge mistake. But that's what the Gemara says. That's machlokas tanaim if we say that the Bnei Korach do or don't have Olam Haba. Now we're going to analyze a lot of the psukim. The pasuk that we're going to analyze now is Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahas ben Levi v'dasan v'aviram b'nei Eliyav on ben Peles b'nei Reuven. We're going to pick apart this pasuk word by word. Vayikach Korach, Amar Reish Lakish, Shalokach mekach ra la'atzmo. Korach did a bad job. He picked what he shouldn't have picked. He picked a bad machlokas. Korach, what does the word Korach mean? Shena'aseh korcha b'Yisrael. He made a bald spot in Israel. All of the tents and all of the spaces in the Jewish people swallowed by the ground. So what did the earth look like when all the tents were gone? A bald spot among the Jewish people. Normally there's hair. When there's no hair, it's a bald spot. Normally there's tents. All the tents are gone. Bald spot. Why does it say Ben Yitzhar? Ben, it's a son, meaning Korach. She'ertiach alav es kol ha'olam kitzoraim. The whole world got angry at him like high noon. Ben Kehas, Ben Shehika Shine Molidav. He is the one who hit the teeth of those who bore him. Obviously, that doesn't mean that he hits them. It just means that he did not exactly make his parents proud. Ben Levi, Ben Shanase Levia beGehenim. He was the son who was the accompanier to Gehenim. Belechshov Nami Ben Yaakov. Why doesn't the pasuk go one generation higher to speak about Yaakov? Ben Yitzhar, Ben Kehas, Ben Levi, Ben Yaakov. Why don't we go one generation more? Ben She'okav Atzmo leGehenim. We could already tell you what the drasha would be. He was the one, Korach, who was who held himself back leGehenim to go to Gehenim. He made terrible decisions. Amar Shmuel bar of Yitzchak, Yaakov bikesh rachamim al atzmo. Yaakov wanted to prevent these things from happening. So he made a request to Hashem to not allow his name to be associated with Korach. Shneimar besodam al tavo nafshi b'kohalam al tachei kvodi. What does this pasuk mean? Besodam al tavo nafshi, with the secret, don't let my soul come. Elu meraglim, the secrets, the conversations that they were having. That's what he wanted to avoid. And b'kohalam al tachei kvodi, ze adas Korach, where Yaakov didn't want his kavod to be reduced because of what his great-grandchild did. What about Dasan, the name Dasan? Sha'avar al das kel, because he violated the religious principles of Hashem. Aviram, what does Aviram mean? She'iber atzmo me'asos tshuva. He worked very hard not to do tshuva. So that's why he got his name. Why does it say ve'on? The Gemara says ve'on, we'll see soon, sheyosha be'aninus. What is aninus? Typically, the phrase aninus means the period of time between death and burial. But if you look in Rashi, in the inner margin, about 3/4 of the way down, Dibur Hamaschel, Sheyasha Be'aninus, Rashi says, She'asa Tshuva, Al Shahaya Imahim Tchila Be'etza. We'll soon see why it is and how it is that On was able to survive this whole train wreck, but he did. What about Peles? Shanasu Bo Pelos, that wonders were done with him, that Rashi says over here, Shenitzal Mehem, that he was saved from being involved with Korach and his people as well. What about Ben Reuven? On Ben Peles b'nei Reuven, Ben Sheroah v'Havin, a son who saw and who understood. Rashi, Roah v'Havin she'ein min hagan kishura upiresh mehem. So these children, on Ben Peles b'nei Reuven, they left from what was going on. They saw that Korach's approach was not the right approach. Amar Rav says, On Ben Peles ishto hitzilaso. The wife of On Ben Peles did something that saved his life. It's questionable what she did, and we should analyze it halachically, but this is what the Gemara says. Amar Le, she said to her husband, On, please don't get involved with this. My nafkalach mina. Who cares who's in charge? Imar Rabba Ant Talmida. If the master Moshe is going to be the teacher, you're still going to be the student. Imar Rabba Ant Talmida. And if Korach is in charge, guess what? You're still going to be the student. Why are you getting involved in this at all? There's no difference for you, On's wife said to him. And On said to his wife, Amarla, Ma'i what do you want me to do? Havoy be'etza. I was there when we met about it. V'ishtaboi li b'hadayu. And I made a promise to them that I would help. So Amrale, the wife said to On, don't worry. Yodana dekula knishta kadishta ninhu. I know that all of these people are holy. How does she know that? Because the pasuk says, "Ki chol ha'edah kulam kedoshim." All of these people are holy. Amr le, she said, Tuv, the ana mitzil nalach. Stay and sit, I will save you. Ashki se chamra. She gave him a little bit of wine. The arvise, and he became inebriated. The agnise gavoy, and he slept inside the tent. And here's what she did that was questionable, though she saved his life. Osva al bava, she sat on the gate, top of Kuf Yudam Aleph, top line. Ustarta lemazie, and she let her hair down. That's what Rashi says. Rashi says, top of the page, Dibur maschil sasra lemazie, sa'ara, her hair. She let down her hair. V'yashval pesach habayis, and she sat by the door. Rashi continues, Kol mishaya ba likro, roa rosha perua v'chozer. She basically uncovered her hair publicly, and that's what she did. The Gemara continues, top line, Kol da'asa, anyone who came over to the door, Chazia Hadar, they would see her and they would turn around. Hadahachi v'hachi, ivlehu lehu. And because he was sleeping, she did this, let's call it something halachically risque. She took off her sheitel and she sat in the front of the house. We would do the same thing. If you see someone who's normally dressed in a modest way, now they're dressed less than their stand, you turn around. So then that's what you do. It says the Gemara, that saved his life. In sharp contrast, Korach's wife was the exact opposite. She was the real instigator here. Itza de Korach, second line of Kuf Yud Aleph. Amrale, she said, Chazi my kavod Moshe. She was totally instigating. Look what Moshe is doing. Iu Abba Malka, he's in charge. La'achuha shavya kana rabba. He made his brother Aaron into the Kohen Gadol. Livnei achoi, to his brother's sons. Shavyu askane dekana. Aaron's kids were the skan kohanim. Iasya truma amar tehabi lekohen. When people give truma, who do they give it to? To the kohen, to his brother, to Aaron, and to his kids. Iasu meiser the shakil to atun. Then the Levim get it. Amar havuchad miyud lekohen. Even then, we still give 10% to the kohen. And not only that, the Levim had a unique din that every hair on their body was removed. The guy is leile mazaychu. He shaved off all of your hair. Umetale lechu kikufta, and he treats you like fecal matter. That's what Rashi says. Ray treats him like you're worthless. Eino yohav b'mazaychu, and he put his focus on your hair and shaved your head and made you a bizayon. Amar la, Korach says back to his wife, yeah, I hear you, but Moshe is a part of it. Ha'ihu nami ka'avid. Moshe also was from Shevet Levi, and he shaved every hair off of his body too. So why are you saying that he's separate? He's not treating himself differently in that way. I understand what you're saying about his brother, but from the Levi side of things, he's doing the same exact thing. Amrle, she said, Kevan de Kulu Revusa Dide Amar, since everything is Kevan de Kulu Revusa Dide, because he's really gaining a lot more. His whole family is in the Malchus of Klal Yisrael. Amar Ihunami Tmos Nafshi Im Plishtim. This is a catchphrase which means I'll go down with the ship. Here, what it means is that, yeah, he'll shave his head to be just like you so that he can get all of the broad benefits. The Ode. She doubles down or triples down at this point, Korach's wife, and says, Teka'amar Lechu Avdisu Tchelta. She said, Moshe told you to make one string of tcheles. Isal kadaitach tchelta chashiva mitzvah. If you want to say that tcheles is how we do this mitzvah, then afi glime de tchelta. Then the whole garment should be tcheles. V'chasinu lekulam esivtach, and the whole yeshiva should be covered in the color blue. What's with the one string? Fascinating argument that this is what bothered her. Of all of the halachos that Moshe taught at Har Sinai, this one bothered her. Okay, not for now, but that's what the Gemara says. What?
They find it.
I have no idea.
They go from Egypt.
Where are we now? Moshe ben. It's Ikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahas ben. No, it was right then. I don't know where they got it from. I mean, it must have been by the water somewhere. Anyways, says the Gemara. Look at the difference between the wives. You have the wife of On who's saying, please don't get involved. And she came up with a whole ruse, and she was even mevaza herself in tznius to make sure this works. And then you have the wife of Korach, who was not mevaza herself, but she was really the instigator. And therefore, says the Gemara, a quarter of the way down, Hanu dechsiv, chachmos nashim bon sabesa. The wisdom of women build homes. Zu ishto shel On ben Peles. That's the wife of On who saved him. What does the pasuk mean when it says "Ve'iveles bi'adot teharsena"? The evil in her hands will destroy zu ishto shel Korach. Let's get into more psukim about the story of Korach. Says the Gemara, "Vayakumu lifnei Moshe v'anushim ibnei Israel chameshimu masayim." That there were 250 men against Moshe. Miyuchadim shebeida. These were special people. Kriyei Moed. These people who were called to the Moed. Shayu yodim la'aber shanim v'likboa chodashim. These were Talmidei Chachamim. They knew how to be Ma'aber years and how to be Ma'aber months. They knew how to be Ma'aber Rosh Chodesh. They knew the zodiac. They knew how to all the rotations of the earth around the sun. They were holding cup. Anshe Shem, Sha'aya Lehem, Shem B'chol Olam. They were famous people. They were famous people that went up against Moshe. The pasuk says, "Vayishma Moshe vayipal al panav mashmu hashama." What is it that Moshe heard that made him fall on his face? Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmeni, Amar Rabbi Yonasan, shechashtu me'eshes ish. Moshe Rabbeinu, the biggest tzaddik that we have in our door, that we had ever in our history, I should say. They were chosheshim of eshes ish. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, "Vayikanu leMoshe b'machane." They were jealous of Moshe. But there's another use of the word kina in halacha, and that is by an isha sota. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchak malamet shekol echad ve'echad kine es ishto mimoshe. They set up their wives. They knew that if their wives were to spend time with Moshe, that they would then make their wives into a sota. They did the warning phase of the kina. That's what it means by Ikanu l'Moshe b'machane, play on words. Shnemar Moshe yikach esa'ol v'nata lo michutz l'machane. The pasuk says, "Vayakam Moshe v'yelech al Dasan ve'Aviram." Why did Moshe go talk to Dasan ve'Aviram? Because they were some of the politicians causing the problems. And the Gemara says halfway down, do not let the machlokas fester. Go to people and try and get rid of the machlokas. Anyone who does hold on to machlokas, over belav. If you are causing machlokas, you're violating an iser deoraisa. That you should not be like them. Ravashi Amar, Ra'ui lehit stareya. You should get saras if you are causing fights. Ksiv hacha biyad Moshe lo, uchsiv hasam vayomer Hashem lo, od havei no yadcha bechekecha. And there we see the word lo in both cases, lamed vav and lamed vav, and therefore we see a link between the two. And of course, in that second set of psukim where Moshe put his hand into a shirt and it came out matzorah kisheleg, so therefore we see a link between the two, that if a person starts a machlokas, then they should have tzaras. Amar Rabbi Yossi, kol acholek al malchus beis David, roi la'akisho nochash. That anyone who argues against the reign and the dynasty of David, it is appropriate for them to be bitten by a snake. We see the word zochales, and Adoniyahu rebelled against David. Those who are winding in the dirt. What winds in dirt? Obviously snakes. Amar Rav Chizda, first of the long lines on Kuf Yud Amud Aleph, heading to the Mishnah on Kuf Yud Amud Beis. Kol acholek al Rabo, anyone who argues against their Rebbe, kecholek al Hashchina. It's as though they are arguing against the Shechina. Shneamar b'hatzosam al Hashem. Amar Reb Chama b'Reb Chanina, kol osam riva im Rabo, anyone who causes a fight, who fights actively with their Rebbe, says the Gemara, k'osam Shechina, same as like you're doing it with Hashem. Shneamar hema meim riva, asher Rabu b'nei Yisrael es Hashem. Next, Amar Reb Chanina, Bar Papa, Kolam Yisrael al Rabo, anyone who makes complaints against their Rebbe, Kilim Yisrael al Ashchina. It's as though they're making complaints against the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Shnemar lo alinu siluno sechem ki al Hashem. We're bringing complaints on Hashem. Amar Rabbi Abo, Kolam Har Haracha Rabo, anyone who has bad thoughts about anything to do with their Rebbe, Kilim Har Haracha Ashchina. That's like not trusting in a Kadosh Baruch Hu and having second thoughts about Hashem. Shnemar by the Bera'ama Belokim Uve Moshe. We see both of them are equated, the Rebbe and the Eibishter. Osher Shemor Laba'al Avara. So what does it mean that the wealth was protecting this person for his bad? Difficult language, difficult syntax. Says the Gemara, Amar Reish Lakish, Zeh Osher Shel Korach. Let's learn a little bit more about the Osher of Korach. Says the Gemara 5 lines into the wide lines on Kuf Yud Amud Aleph, it's called Hayakum Asher B'Ragleihem. Not only did they go down, but all of their Yakum, all of their possessions, they also were swallowed by the earth. Amar Rebbe Lazar Zeh Mamono Shel Adam. The Yakum that we're talking about is the wealth, the possessions of a person, Shema'amidu al Raglav, that he would keep at his feet, meaning that he would keep nearby. Va'amar Rebbe Levi, Masui Gimel Ma'os Predos. There was loads of 300 Predos Levanos, white donkeys. Hayu Maftechos Shel Beis Gnazav Shel Korach. They just held the keys to the storehouses of Korach. He was massively wealthy. And not only that, Vikulhu aklidi vikilfi de gilda. They were made out of leather, these keys. They were light keys, but lightweight keys. But nevertheless, they accessed his 300 warehouses. He was filthy rich, as we say in our parlance. Rabbi Chama, Rabbi Chanina, Gimel Matmonios Hitmin Yosef in Mitzrayim. Yosef hid three massive storages in Mitzrayim. Achas niskalsa leKorach. One of them ended up being revealed by Korach. Achas niskalsa la'Antoninus ben Asvirus. One of them was found by this person who was a Roman king. Achas gnuza letzadikim la'asid lavo. And there is a third hidden collection of Yosef's wealth that is saved for the tzaddikim in the next world. This goes to Tex's question from earlier. Korach was not swallowed by the earth, nor was he burnt when the Machte, when Moshe called for the miracle to happen that next morning. Lomina bluin. How do we know that Korach was not of the ones who were swallowed by the earth? Because Dichsiv is called Adam Asher liKorach v'lo Korach. The pasuk seems to say that all the people of Korach, but not Korach. How do we know that he wasn't burnt to death? It's Korach plus 250. He was 251, so he must not have been burnt either. However, while that may well be the shita of Rabbi Chama of Rabbi Yochanan, that's not what the Brisa says. B'masnisa Tana, 12 lines from the bottom, Korach mina srufim umina bluim. He was both burnt and swallowed. Mina blum dechsiv ativla osam ve'es Korach. Mina srufim dechsiv ve'esh yatsa me'es Hashem v'tocha es chamishim u'masayim ish v'Korach. Ba'adai, Korach was one of the 250, not separate of the 250. And according to this brisa, it seems to be that he got both consequences. Omar Rava, what does the pasuk mean when it says Shemesh Yarach Amad Zevula Leor Chatzecha Yahalechu? Melamed she Alu Shemesh v'Yareach LeZvul, that the sun and the moon went to Zvul, which was some place up in the heavens. Amru Lefana Ribono Shalom Imata Osed Din LeBen Amram Neitze. You need to take care of Ben Amram. He's being mistreated by Korach. The luminaries up in the sky said, if you do what you're supposed to do, Hashem, we'll go do our job, Neitze, and we will light up the world like we do every other day. Being lav, but if you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, don't go down and protect Moshe from what's going on with Korach v'chol hadaso, lo Neitze. Ultimatum. It's probably not a good idea to give an ultimatum to the Eibishter, but that's what the luminaries up in the heavens did. The sun and the moon said, we're not going anywhere until you protect Moshe Rabbeinu. What did Hashem do in response? Ad shezarak b'hem chitzim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu started shooting arrows at them until they left their coverage, and then they went to go do what they were supposed to do, which is be luminaries. Amar lehen, what did Hashem say to the luminaries? B'chvodi lo machisem. I don't see you coming after my own kavod. B'chvod basar v'adam machisem. Yeah, when it came to kings bowing down to inanimate objects, you seem to have no problem going to do your job, the sun and the moon. But when Moshe is in trouble, a melech basar v'adam, he's not even a melech, but he's basar v'adam, there you got all concerned. So the Gemara seems to say that even now, the sun only leaves its pocket, only goes into brightening up the world after arrows are shot at it. Again, we don't understand what this means on the surface level. Dorash Rava, that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates it, then the ground will open up. Amar Moshe lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Im Bria Gehenim Mutab. If you've created Gehenim, fantastic. V'im Lav Yivra Hashem. And if not, then Hashem, please create Gehenim, because these people need it. The Gemara says, Lamai, if what you're saying, Moshe, is that you want Hashem to create the Gehenim now, it's already been created. Famous pasuk. There's nothing new. Everything was created by the Doro, by the Shevi Yemei Breishis. There already is a Gehenim. Ella, what do you mean? Ella lekruve pischa. All I'm saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is make the entrance to Gehenim a little bit closer. So that's what Moshe was davening for, and that's why he asked for the ground to open up so that they could go into Gehenim, a closer locale. The pasuk says, "Uvnei Korach lo mesu." This is a well-known story. Tana mishum Rabbeinu. Amru makom nisbatzer lehem beGehenim. There was a place that they were gathered in Gehenim, but they weren't in Gehenim. Vayeshvu alav. They sat on top of that place. Amru shira, and they actually started saying shira. They actually started saying some prayers. In a lot of the Kisayad, this language was not there of the Amru Shira, but just that they sat on top of Gehenim. And Amar Rabbi Bar Barchana, Zimnachada have a zilna beorcha. He said, Rabbi Barchana said he was walking along the way. Amar Leahutaya, there was an Arab merchant who was passing by, and the Arab merchant tells Rabbi Bar Barchana, Ta, come with me, v'achvelach blue de Korach, and I'll show you where the people of Korach were swallowed. Azil, and he saw two parts, meaning he saw a crack in the ground between the two parts. And there was smoke that was emanating from these crevices in the ground. Shakal gevava de imra, and he took a glob of wool, amshe maya, and he saturated them with water. Ve'osve bereish romche, he put it on the tip of a spear. Ve'achlefei hasam, and he put it over that crack in the ground where the steam was coming from. And ichrach, he saw that it was getting singed, that it was getting burnt. Amar le, atis mai shamas. The Arab merchant tells Rabbi Bar Barchana, why don't you listen closely? Go listen to what they're saying. You can hear them. So the Gemara says, Vishames, bottom line of Kuf Yud Amar, Vishames avu ka'amre hachi, Moshe v'saraso emes v'hein badoin. Moshe and his Torah are emes v'hein, they, but really, we, the people who actually failed at this whole Maisa, v'hein badoin, they are the ones who really were incorrect. So they felt regret. Turning to the top of Kuf Yud Amud Beis, and we're going to do another half of a page here, and then we'll call it a night at Masnisa. Says the Gemara, Amar le kol tlas and yomin, every 30 days, Mahadra luhu Gehenim kibasar besoch kalachas. Gehenim comes around every 30 days, just like a person who stirs food in the pot. You don't let it sit still. Every once in a while, you go back and you stir the pot. The same thing was true over here. Ve'amre, and then you can hear them saying, Ve'amre hachi, the same line again. Moshe v'soraso emes v'hein badoin. We made a mistake, say the Bnei Korach, and Moshe and his Torah are emes. Let's talk a little bit about the Dor HaMidbar. Dor HaMidbar, the people who lived in the Dor HaMidbar, ein lahem chelek lo'olam haba v'chule. Tanu Rabbanon. Dor HaMidbar, ein lahem chelek lo'olam haba. Shenamar b'midbar zeh yitamu v'sham yamusu. They will be completed and they will die. Yitamu ba'olam hazeh. They'll die in this world. V'sham yamusu ba'olam haba. And they won't have any next world. The Amar, the pasuk says, Asher nishbati ve'api im yavon el menuchasi. This is where we see the shita of Divrei Rabbi Akiva. Hashem promised in His anger, im yavon al menuchasi, that they will not come to the place of rest, namely that they have no olam haba. And Rabbi Eliezer Omer laolam hein bain laolam haba. No, the Dor HaMidbar does have olam haba. Shenemar es v'li chaside korse brisi al zevach. We're going to gather these people, and they're going to bring korbanos, and they'll feel bad for what they did. They'll be contrite, and they'll grow, and they will then get olam haba. Elamani mekayim asher nishbati ve'api. What does Rabbi Eliezer do with the pasuk that Rabbi Akiva uses? Rabbi Akiva's pasuk says that they will not be able to be yavu el menuchasi. Says the Gemara, ba'api nishbasi v'chozreini bi, that he changed his mind. He started that way, but he changed his mind. Namely, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said originally they will have no olam haba, and then he changed his mind. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha Omer, Lo Nemar Pasuk Zela Keneged Doros Haboim. That pasuk is not talking about the pasuk that Rabbi Eliezer uses. It's talking about something else. Esvuli Chasidei. What does that part of the pasuk mean? The pasuk that Rabbi Eliezer was using to say that they do have Olam Haba. That wasn't talking about the Dor HaMidbar at all. What was it talking about? Elu Tzadikim Shebechol Dor Vador. That the Chasidim are going to be gathered. The Tzadikim. Korsei Brisi says the Gemara. Elu Chananya Mishal VeAzariah Shemasar and Atzman L'Soch Kiv Shanish. That pasuk's not talking at all about the Dor HaMidbar. It's talking about the greats who we learned about earlier in this Masechta, who put themselves into a kivshan. Alei zevach. What does that mean? Elu Rabbi Akiva v'chavei Rav shemasru atman l'shchita al divrei Torah. The language is very poetic. Alei zevach. They were brought as korbanos. They were a zevach. They were shechted. And this is talking about the Asara Harugei Malchus, who gave themselves over to be shechted to die. And that's why there's no raya one way or the other from Rabbi Eliezer, because the pasuk that he wanted to use, says the Gemara, was repurposed for something else. Reb Shimon ben Manasseh Omer, we're 1/3 of the way down, about 8 lines before the Mishnah. He says, "Boim hein la'olam haba." No, they are going to come to olam haba, the Dor HaMidbar. Shenemar v'duya Hashem yeshuvenu v'od Tzion berina. They're going to come to Tzion berina. Amar Rabba bar Barchana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shavka Rabbi Akiva l'chasidusei. Rabbi Akiva used to be the one who used to have a much more positive glint, a positive outlook on the Jewish people. Yet here we see he's the one who has the negative perspective. Remember, he was the one at the top of the page who said that the Dor HaMidbar is going to die, and they're not going to get Olam Haba based on the pasuk of Asher Nishbati ve'api im yivon el menuchasi. So it says the Gemara, Shnamar halach v'karasa b'ozni Yerushalayim limor zacharti lo chesed u'rayach abbas kulu lo saich lech lech achar b'midbar be'er zerua. Famous song. So the Gemara says that that's how we should be looking out at the Jews. Okay, people make mistakes, but they trusted a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and they went out into a place that had nothing there. Why is Rabbi Akiva not being positive? If other people are going to be invested in helping them, they for sure are going to want to help themselves. Yet Rabbi Akiva did not have that perspective. And it's unique that he didn't. And we'll learn a little bit more about Rabbi Akiva after the next Mishnah. So for tonight, we're going to pause right here at the Aseres HaShvatim in the middle of Kuf Yud Amud Beis. The next blot, which is Kuf Yud Aleph, is a relatively normal length blot. So we'll do that. What day is it today? Today's Sunday, so it's Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday's blot is very unique. We'll hang over a little bit of the blot for Thursday morning for Tainus B'chorim, and then we'll have our Fleshik Suda then. Please be in touch if you have any questions about that. Wishing you all a beautiful night.